Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something called the African paradox. It's this really fundamental question. How can a continent with just so many natural resources still have so much poverty? We're drawing heavily from the President of Africa YouTube channel for this one, specifically clips featuring President Duma Boko and President Ibrahim Traore. They really confront this contradiction head on. So our mission here is to, unpack the layers, look at the history, the systems, the current factors, all based on what the source material presents, and crucially, what solutions are being put forward by some leaders there. It's really about getting to the heart of why all that incredible wealth isn't reaching the people. And the scale of this wealth, the source makes it clear, it's just immense. Africa holds more than 1/3 of the entire world's natural resources. Think about that. We're talking huge oil reserves. Nigeria, Angola, and Namibia is discovering it now too. Diamonds, Botswana, Namibia, gold, South Africa, Ghana, Mali, Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, the list goes on.
And you can't forget cobalt and copper, especially Zambia, the Copper Belt, and the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Right, and uranium too, in Niger and Namibia. Critical stuff.
Absolutely critical.
But the number that just jumps out from the source, the DRC, estimated $24 trillion in untapped minerals.
Yeah, it's an almost unimaginable figure. And what's really key to grasp here is how these resources prop up the global economy. This isn't just local potential. It's enough, the source suggests, to power global economies for generations.
Wow.
Take that example given about France, reportedly exporting electricity. Well, where did the uranium for that power likely come from? Niger. And the irony, Niger itself was actually importing electricity from Nigeria. Then, when Niger made some, let's say, political shifts, Nigeria cut off the power supply.
So it just shows how interconnected and maybe fragile these resource links are.
Exactly. Africa's resources are foundational globally, but the dynamics are complex and can shift fast.
Okay, so you've got this picture of incredible world-powering wealth on one side, but then the source just pivots hard to the other side of the paradox, the reality for millions. Poverty, unemployment, displacement, hunger, it's stark.
It really is.
The source gives these heartbreaking examples. Nigeria, right, biggest oil producer.
Yet 133 million people living below the poverty line.
It's hard to even comprehend. And the DRC, with all that cobalt and gold.
Children as young as 10 reportedly working in mines with their bare hands.
Just awful. And beyond that, it talks about the basics, the infrastructure, broken roads, schools without funding, constant power cuts.
Yeah, the source mentions kids getting used to electricity when electricity goes. That really paints a picture.
And no clean water in many places. It's just a tough reality to square with the resource picture.
And this contradiction, it's crucial to understand, isn't just bad luck. It's not random. The source argues very strongly that it's rooted in history and specific systems, in, decisions, past and present.
Right. It has deep roots, as you say.
Very deep, very tangled roots.
Okay, let's try and unpack some of those roots then. The source identifies several key factors, right?
Yes, quite a few.
So these historical, systemic things, they're not just history, are they? The source seems to say they're still actively shaping things today.
Absolutely. That's the core argument. And the first big one is the colonial legacy. The source uses phrases like, colonialism worked on us, suggesting it socialized the African mind to feel, second class.
Wow, that's a heavy statement.
It is. And economically, the point is that African economies were explicitly designed not for Africans, but to serve the colonial powers. Think Ghana basically becoming a cocoa-producing entity, Congo a rubber-producing entity, Angola just an oil entity.
So extraction points, essentially.
Pretty much. And the argument is that basic structure, that mindset, still lingers today in many economic setups.
Okay, so that's the historical foundation. What builds on that?
Well, linked to that is something called the resource curse. It sounds counterintuitive.
Yeah, you'd think resources would be a blessing.
Exactly. But this phenomenon shows that countries rich in resources often, paradoxically, grow slower, have more corruption, and suffer more conflict.
Why is that?
Governments tend to put all their eggs in one basket, relying heavily on exporting just one thing, oil, gold, whatever, so they neglect developing other sectors like manufacturing or agriculture.
Which means fewer jobs.
Fewer diverse jobs, yes. And it leads to inflation, plus this massive vulnerability to global commodity prices. If the price of oil crashes, or cocoa, or copper, it can spell disaster for the whole country's budget.
Like Zambia, the source mentioned, relying so much on copper.
A classic example, yeah. Not diversifying enough.
So that resource curse, how does it actually feel for, like, an ordinary person day to day, beyond the big economic numbers?
Well, think about it. If the government's focus is just on that one big export, they might invest less in things you need, like stable jobs in different industries or reliable schools and hospitals. Your cost of living might shoot up with inflation, but wages don't keep pace. And basic services can be unreliable because government income swings wildly with that one commodity price. It's that boom and bust cycle hitting home.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's corruption. The source uses some strong language here.
It does. Industrial looting, primitive accumulation of wealth. Very strong.
There's an analogy, something about oranges.
Yeah, people want to eat 99 oranges, yet 100 people have to share one orange.
That really gets the disparity across, a tiny few taking almost everything.
Exactly. The source mentions examples, maybe hyperbolic, maybe not, of leaders with 150 cars, or chartering private jets to go to the UN to ask for loans.
The irony.
It also raises the issue of competence, or lack thereof, appointing, girlfriends and people who sing better at rallies instead of qualified people.
That can't lead to good long-term planning.
Well, no. And the source also points to instability. Governments changing every few years. After 5 years, we were changing governments the plan. Change. Any long-term vision just gets derailed.
So you have internal corruption, this industrial looting. But what about outside forces? The source mentions foreign exploitation.
Right. It claims multinational corporations, names like Chevron, Shell, Total, are mentioned, sometimes play underhand, allegedly bribing corrupt leaders to get favorable deals.
So the country doesn't get a fair share.
That's the claim. Billions generated, say, from Zambian copper or Nigerian oil. But the government, the source says, might end up with only a few cents on the dollar. And it states Congo is even worse. So immense wealth flowing out, very little staying.
And on top of all that, conflict.
Yes, the fifth factor. These wars, the source alleges, are sometimes sponsored precisely to keep regions poor and unstable, easier to exploit perhaps.
And it links specific resources to conflict.
Yeah. Blood diamonds in Sierra Leone, oil issues in Sudan and Nigeria, cobalt conflicts in eastern Congo, resources fueling fighting, preventing development.
Okay, so if that's the mess, the source must point fingers at who's actually benefiting from this system staying the way it is.
Oh, absolutely. It's quite explicit. First, these big companies we just talked about. Second, former colonial powers. France gets a specific mention regarding its role with the CFA currency used in 14 African nations.
The CFA franc. Remind us quickly what that is.
Sure. It's a currency used in mostly West and Central Africa. It's pegged to the euro and historically backed by the French treasury. Critics, like those in the source, argue this gives France undue economic influence and limits the monetary freedom of those African countries.
Got it. So big companies, former colonial powers. Who else?
Crucially, the source points to local elites. These are the insiders benefiting personally, described as driving Lamborghinis, living in huge 35-bedroom houses, mansions looking like hospitals.
Well, ordinary people suffer.
Exactly. It contrasts this with villagers being displaced for resource extraction, like for black granite in Zimbabwe, and not being compensated.
A stark contrast indeed.
And finally, it mentions offshore banks holding billions in stolen wealth siphoned off by politicians. It even draws a parallel to the slave trade era, where a small elite collaborates and benefits massively.
So the bottom line is?
The bottom line, according to the source, the average African does not see the wealth from the oil, the diamonds, the cobalt. It just doesn't reach them.
It's a deeply challenging picture, but the source doesn't just leave it there, does it? It talks about Africa waking up, fighting back.
Yes, that's the crucial turn. There's a sense of a shift happening, a growing resistance.
So what are the solutions being proposed? What are these leaders actually saying needs to be done?
A major theme is taking back control. Calls to own our resources, potentially nationalize them, and critically, beneficiation. That means processing the raw materials in Africa.
Instead of just shipping out raw ore or crude oil.
Exactly. Refine our own minerals. Keep the value-added steps and the jobs on the continent. Burkina Faso is mentioned as a place where this is apparently starting to work.
And other leaders pushing this.
President Duma Boko of Botswana is quoted, "We have to change the game." Namibia is apparently looking to beneficiate resources, not just for itself, but for all Africans. A Pan-African approach.
Interesting. What else, beyond just owning and processing?
Transparency is huge.
Yeah.
Ghana is highlighted for enforcing laws demanding transparency in the oil sector, and also for creating sovereign wealth funds.
To manage the money better for the long term.
Precisely. So it's not all squandered or dependent on current prices. investing for future generations.
Makes sense. What about the people themselves?
Unity and accountability. A call for Africans to unite as one and, importantly, demand accountability from our leaders, holding them responsible.
That links back to the corruption point.
Directly, and it connects to the call to stop just exporting raw stuff and start processing and manufacturing locally, build diverse economies.
But you need skilled people for that.
Absolutely, that's another key point. Human capital development, the need to train engineers and scientists in our own African continent, to build the capacity within Africa to manage and beneficiate these resources effectively.
So the overall goal is
To control our resources,
right,
and then create proper systems that will manage our resources. Taking ownership, building capacity, ensuring transparency and accountability.
And the source sums up the sentiment from these leaders quite powerfully, doesn't it?
It does. It's not about handouts.
Right. Africa does not need any pitch from anyone. Africa does not need charity.
Africa needs justice. Africa needs fairness. Africa needs to be treated fairly and with respect. That's the core message.
It really shifts the frame from aid to, well, justice. But implementing these kinds of changes against those entrenched systems you described, the source must imply that's a huge challenge.
Oh, undoubtedly. The implication is that you're pushing against powerful interests, both external and internal elites who benefit from things staying as they are. It suggests the vision is clear, but actually making it happen. That involves confronting established economic structures, deep-seated corruption. It's a massive undertaking.
A real uphill battle, then.
Potentially, yes. But the narrative presented is one of determination. So wrapping this up for you, our listener, what we've explored today, drawing from this source material, is that this paradox, immense wealth alongside deep poverty, isn't some accident of fate. It's presented as a result of historical design, ongoing exploitation, corruption, and systemic issues. And the way forward, as articulated by these leaders in the source, it's a demand for fundamental change, for justice, fairness, and control, not charity.
Exactly. And there's that final thought from the source that really sticks with you. As Africans, we have to respect ourselves first before the world starts to respect us. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does that really mean, self-respect for a whole continent, in practice? How does that idea translate into action beyond the necessary steps of resource control and better governance? What are those individual steps, those collective shifts needed for that kind of foundational change in perspective? How a continent sees itself and how it demands the world see it? Something definitely worth pondering.